A rare 2-day break in the Pacers action means we can talk about a variety of Pacers topics today. We're talking about Caris LeVert, how he has played since he returned, Myles Turner's resurgence and dominance in recent games, TJ Warren's sort of eventual return, and many more things with Brendan Rourke from Pacers.com. Lots to get to on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the West Side Community News, and today is a special day for many reasons. The first one being this is the first weekday of the season where there wasn't a game yesterday and there's not a game tomorrow, which to you listening might not mean much, but to me, making content is fantastic. I can breathe for like 2 seconds. So there's a lot to get to today. I want to talk about Caris LeVert and his return and how he's looked since coming back just over a week ago. Myles Turner's continued rise. Talked a little about that yesterday. TJ Warren, we got return news from him from Rick Carlisle last week. Didn't even talk about that yet. Some other general Pacers topics. And the other reason today's show is a special show is because joining me to talk about these things from Pacers.com, Mr. Brendan Rourke himself. Brendan, how's it going, man?
Oh, I'm hanging in there just like everybody else. So we'll get through this, huh?
Making it happen. Writing Pacers, surviving, getting to the next day. We're all doing the same thing around here, right?
For sure. Enjoying that day off as well. That's a nice breath of fresh air after the first 11 games.
Very few people can especially after last season, very few people can understand how much 2 days between games means.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's unbelievable.
Last season was just chaos. I mean, game every other day, game back to back. And the Pacers still this year, I think they've played the most games in the season at 13 so far, 11, or tied for the most in league at 11. So beyond their schedule being ridiculous, it's been really rapid fire. But let's start with Caris LeVert. I sent Brendan some topics today, and LeVert's at the top of my list for several reasons, because we kind of have only 5 games, not like solid, but we finally have a good little cluster of games with him under Rick Carlisle, with various guys on the roster to kind of assess how he's looked this season. And last night was his highest scoring output, for you guys 2 nights ago of the season against Sacramento with 22 points, but it took him 22 shots to do it. He's really ramping up the shot count every game as his minutes go up. So Brendan, I'll just throw it to you with the very broad question. How do you feel like LeVert's doing since he's come back?
Well, I think we're seeing basically what any of us would think of as normal. I mean, slowly getting back into rhythm after missing, training camp and missing the whole idea of trying to build that chemistry with the team, and you have to sit on the sidelines. We're seeing him slowly get back to play. I mean, if you look at his shots, they've increased every game so far. So he's trying to find that rhythm and trying to get his footing. Even he said it after the Sacramento game, he still believes he's not 100%. So as fans have to trust him that he's not there yet, but he's trying. So
that's always a hard thing to grapple with. I think that was your question that he answered that from when he said, not only I didn't have camp, but I'm also not like fully in game shape yet, right? And that's like, it's hard to understand that when you're watching a guy play a full minutes load. It's like, even if he's playing that much, he might be winded more often than normal, or he might not be able to do all the things he's normally able to do, which makes it a little harder to assess how he's done. But I generally agree with you that I think it's kind of actually been interesting that at first I thought he was rapidly connecting with teammates, but his roles kind of toggled between games, because I remember at media day, he talked about how he was psyched to have a training camp because he didn't have that last year. So he can finally connect with this team and really get chemistry with these guys. And then he only kind of had a training camp. He was at every practice, but didn't practice, didn't do 5-on-5, 3-on-3, whatever. So right away, second game, 7 assists, then 5, then 6. I was thinking like, wow, he's connecting really well with these guys. But at the same time, it kind of feels like, and some of this is tied to Brogdon being in and out, that as he's ramped up in activity, he's gone more from Carlisle asking him to be a setup man to him just being a scorer. It feels like, especially in the Sacramento game. So I'm curious how his role will be going forward and how he's kind of viewed, because I think he's really valuable to this team in his way of being a creator. And that's why I'm really looking forward to his next 5 games as he continues to build that chemistry with this unit on how he can be a setup man for the rest of the Pacers.
For sure. I mean, I think you do see that in the Sacramento game. Carlisle saw he only had 6 points at halftime, and he said basically, look, the third quarter is going to be almost all yours. He took, I think it was 10 shots in the third quarter, which is 2 fewer than the other 7 players combined in the third quarter. I mean, Carlisle gave him the reins, and you don't really see that from a Carlisle offense. You always want to see like paint touches and then kicking back out and things like that. But Carlisle called Caris's number, and he delivered in that third quarter, especially.
I think that's becoming a trend, because guess who led the Pacers in shots in the third quarter against the Knicks? You'll never guess.
Was it Caris?
It was Caris LeVert. Guess who led the Pacers in shots in the third quarter against the Portland Trail Blazers?
With Caris.
It was in fact Caris LeVert. So maybe this is a thing where they come out in the second half and try to kind of get him going. And in those 2 games, coincidentally, he kind of struggled in the first half, and really in the Knicks game came alive in the second half, less so in the Portland game, but still to an extent. So perhaps Carlisle sees the adjustments he needs to make and can rely on LeVert, because he's the only guy on the team who's healthy right now that can both get in the lane and pass and shoot, to be a guy who can, be the initiator, and they can run through him more.
And I think you see kind of with these slow starts of the third quarter, and I think LeVert really wants to kind of make his own image still. He's been on the bench a lot, or he's been sidelined with injuries a lot, not necessarily on the bench, but, he was in the shadow of, Harden, Durant, everybody, and he wants to still make a name for himself. So I think Carlisle's given him that chance to put his kind of imprint in a quarter where the Pacers have struggled. So he's trying to turn to someone that can kind of jumpstart this offense and finishing out the second half of games.
The other thing with LeVert, and this will be kind of his struggle for a long time, is, he's kind of up and down efficiency wise. He scored well in the Sacramento game. It took him a ton of shots, and Davion Mitchell put him in jail a few times. But to be fair to Caris, Davion Mitchell has put several people in jail this season, with his defense. It's been very impressive to see a rookie be that good of an on-ball defender already. The thing with Caris is he's such a good scorer, like legit. Obviously, I'm comparing him to Aaron Holiday, is why I'm putting these prefaces on. Like he's a legit great starter in the NBA for a reason. My comparison to Aaron Holiday is that Aaron Holiday sometimes got too rim focused and not distributing focused. He couldn't balance it, and sometimes I think Caris is too focused on scoring and gets tunnel vision in a way that's kind of detrimental to his efficiency and the team's offense. That's kind of the thing that I've noticed from him that maybe he needs to take a step forward in after these 5 games. Is he's forcing it a bit much or putting up a shot that he's the only guy on the team that takes a 2-pointer that I scratch my head at on this team. Very few guys take 2-pointers that make me scratch my head. And he's earned the benefit of the doubt. He has several games where he is far and away their best source of offense. So it's not like you tell him to stop taking them, but I wish personally that he could find that balance a little more, because I think that would help the team and everybody else kind of succeed altogether. But I still think he's been very good so far.
Yeah, and going back to your 2-pointer comment, he takes the 2-pointers that, say, TJ Warren used to make all in 2019-20. It's like that every shot that Warren threw up in 2019-20, the harder it looked, the more it went in. And I think LeVert's trying to replicate that right now. And he needs to find his own, and he needs to find another person on the wing to kick it back out to or anything after he drives.
And Warren is hilarious, because like some of his shots, it's like with Caris, at least I get how he got it off. Like he just faded away or like stuck his leg out to get space. Warren, he'll be like surrounded by 3 dudes and like the arms are all over him, and all of a sudden the ball just pops out and goes in. I'm like, how did he even shoot the ball? How did he even do that? I've never had another player who made me think, how did he even shoot the ball?
Yeah, it's wild. I don't understand it either. But I think you do see LeVert kind of having these almost mini auditions to fill in, especially in the third quarter.
I think a lot of guys had auditions early under Carlisle too, which was interesting. I think they've kind of settled in there. Speaking of guys who maybe are now going through their audition, Myles Turner. Oh boy, what a week he just had. What a week he just had. Nominated for Eastern Conference Player of the Week officially, as the Pacers went 3-1. His official stats from last week, from the Spurs game through the Kings game: 18 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, 3 block shot, 57% from the field. Hit half his threes, hit 82% of his free throws, and the Pacers kicked some major ass when he was in the game. It's been insane to see this turnaround from him, because for a couple, I don't want to give any grand takeaways from the first 5 games of any season. That's stupid. But, after 5-6 games where he wasn't playing a ton in the second half of these games and foul trouble was really plaguing him. And I was kind of like, man, I'm going to have to really think about how Carlisle and Myles' relationship is after, pretty soon. I want to talk about that. And basically ever since I said out loud, like, I might have to do a segment on that soon, he's just been incredible. Like, there's no reason for their relationship to be anything other than symbiotic. What have you seen that from Turner specifically that makes you go, that made this turnaround start? Like, why do you feel like all of a sudden he's just so much more valuable than he was even 2 weeks ago?
Well, I really think, and I mean, this is playing on him being, a top defender in the league, but now it's his rebound positioning this year, I think, is much better than last year. If you would watch him last year before the injuries, before his he stopped playing at the end of the season, he would, absolutely sell out for a block. He would jump, he would swat, he'd get way up in the air, and then he'd be out of position for a rebound. Now it kind of looks like he's taken a bit off of it. I would say he's taken a bit, kind of a back step. He's waiting for these drivers and guards to make their second or third move to the basket so that he can either block when they try a reverse layup or block something. That way he only has, 30 to 60 degrees to turn around, and he's right at the net in case they miss, in case he doesn't block it, but just alters it. And I think that's the initial step, is he's staying in the paint. He's staying more stabilized and not going 110% for a block. He's going 100%. And I think it's working out to his advantage. I mean, you see these increase in rebounding numbers now because he's staying in the paint and he's staying locked in.
Hey guys, we're going to take one short break here to talk to you about two great groups of people. First up, the good folks over at Truebill, because do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 per year with Truebill because companies just make subscriptions hard to cancel. Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there to help you need them cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and helped them save over $100 million, like Matthew B., who says, in a matter of seconds, I saved $660 for the year on my DirecTV bill, saved $120 on my SiriusXM bill, and saved $840 a year on my car insurance. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Get right now. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Let's also talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. They offer more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator and offers the superstar players as well as bench players, only recording a handful of minutes each game. They offer any prop you can think of: yardage, touchdowns, interceptions thrown, you name it, they got it. And any users that listen to the show, if you get on there right now to make a deposit and use the promo code NBA when you sign up, you'll get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections. You could win 10 times, up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. Prize Picks allows multi-sport entries too, so you can take LeBron James over and the under on Mahomes in the same entry. Use their award-winning app today. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and it's safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com today. Use the promo code NBA in the App Store today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and I know you will too. He had one block on Halliburton on Sunday where I think he waited on him specifically for like 4 seconds. Like he just was turning and looking at him like, all right, come on, I'm ready. And then he did it and he blocked it. I was like, what were you thinking? You can see him facing you. It was very hilarious to watch because the camera angle too is behind Halliburton. So for viewers, it looked so obvious. And I'm sure Halliburton could see other stuff on the court. But it's like, why did he take that shot? It was pretty funny. I agree with that. I think that he kind of took, like it looked like at first last year, he was taking a step forward in that area where he wasn't blocking it to the point that he was just useless after the block. And then that kind of went away. He got more aggressive and got the block title eventually. But this year he's been better at that. The other thing for him is, I've always kind of maintained this stance that he's a good box out guy, but not a good rebounder, which those are very separate skills in that sometimes he'll box his guy out, and then once the ball actually comes off the rim, he gets beat, or he doesn't actually go for it. He kind of hopes someone else gets it, and that makes him look out of position or weak at times. Whereas this year, a lot more often, especially against Sacramento, against, I think, New York a few times as well, Yeah, he had 13 rebounds in that game. He sees the ball and he just gets it. Like he goes and gets it. And to translate that to offense, I think you were on the post game for that game as well, the Knicks game, where he had that dunk in the fourth quarter, and like probably 3 minutes before that, he got the same pass from Domas under the basket, and he went up soft and he missed. And then he got it later and he dunked it. And I think he's just kind of realizing that when he's around the basket on both ends, if he just plays with a little more force, it adds so much to his aggression because he's learned how to mix in aggression. He's learned how to be more confident. He just still sometimes is not quite the forceful guy he needs to be. And in this last week, a little over a week, probably 10 days now, he's really applied that force to his areas where he's already good. And it's making him just look dominant. And when the Pacers, when he's in, like they always are winning his minutes this year. And it's really standing out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you said it best. He's a 7-footer. He's 250 pounds. Like he's kind of learning now to use that body. He's not afraid to get dirty now against these big forwards or big centers that Indiana has sort of had troubles with. He's setting himself up really nicely, and he's kind of rounding out his full defensive game to the point where maybe he doesn't feel like he should be snubbed anymore, because I know a lot of fans say, oh, he only got blocks compared to Rudy Gobert, compared to all the other defensive top defenders. Now he's actually has, rebounds to his name and
right.
Positioning. Yeah.
And not to, I don't want to reflect too much on how Bjorkgren puts stress on everybody with his defensive scheme, but now that it's more simple for everybody, I think he's got a little more energy to be playing in the correct role too. And he's not doing so much obscure stuff. And he bailed out a lot of mistakes last year. There's less of that, right? So the opportunities he does have are more natural, I think, too. So that's also helping a little bit. And yeah, on offense, if he keeps shooting well too, like, I mean, obviously that's such a duh thing, but if he what is he at for the season now? 41%. Keeps hitting 41% of over 5 threes a game. I think we're going to be talking about Myles Turner quite often this season. I mean, I hate to be that reductive sometimes, but when he's hitting threes like this too, it just, the dynamics of his game are just so crazy because it's impossible. Like now that he can fake and put it on the floor, it's so hard to guard him.
Yeah, and it stretches out defenders for everybody. If you look, also, he doesn't need to be a facilitator, but he also has 2+ assists in 3 straight games.
Yeah,
he has 2+ assists in 4 of the last 5. I think he had 4 games ago. I don't remember who they played. I should have wrote it down, but I think he had 4 at one point. And he's finding that person if he's not open at the 3-point line, or he's finding that person if he's the one who, drives into the paint now, which is what he also added. So it's not facilitator numbers by any means, but it's another facet, 2, 3, 4 times a game that other defenders and opponents have to watch out for now. It's just another thing he added.
He's at his second highest assist rate of his career, only behind his last season as the only starting center on his team when he was next to Thad in 2018-19. So he had more opportunities that year, and Vic got hurt that year. It's just different. Stats don't count that season. So, yeah, I think his passing is more refined. I tweeted about this play specifically because it was just like, what? Where he drive and kicked and then kicked it out to the corner to TJ McConnell, who then scored. And you're like, wait, those names are wrong. That doesn't make sense. That play doesn't make sense. But it's kind of how the Pacers are where their roles on every possession are interchangeable. And Carlisle trusts guys to make plays. And Turner has certainly been a benefactor of all that.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing a more well-rounded player. I mean, I think against Sacramento, it was his 400th career game.
Yes,
and some people still are like, well, we really don't know, but at 400 games, you should probably see at least something. And I think we're seeing something in the positive direction, and hopefully it continues.
I can't believe I skipped this news, but the Pacers so much has happened. Injuries, sicknesses, actually winning games, guys returning, the team looking good, all these guys. Like Rick Carlisle provided a pretty substantial update about TJ Warren last week, and I was like, yeah, I'll talk about it later. Like, that's crazy. He's like they haven't had him for forever. We even got a little peek under the curtain from Shams Charania of The Athletic today that the Pacers are hopeful for a return late this season. Rick Carlisle's return jives with that. He said weeks, not months, multiple months from now would be later in January. So it seems like Carlisle's timeline is right on cue with what is to be believed from the rest of the organization. So TJ Warren back in. I'm just going to pick Christmas. How many days are there till Christmas from now? I should have this on my computer somewhere. I have Christmas lights up behind me, right? So I should be jazzed up by this stuff. Looks like 4.5-ish, or no, that's way off. Holy cow, Tony. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks until Christmas. So we're about 7-ish weeks from Warren's return. Timelines don't matter. I'm just putting stuff together. TJ Warren is awesome. Bubble TJ was the last time we saw him. He was unbelievable. Maybe the best Pacers run for a player. Maybe the best Pacers 5-game stretch ever. Like ever for any player, which is insane. He was so good, and his defense was really missed. Kevin Pritchard has talked about that over and over and over again when talking about how injuries have harmed this team. So to you, Brendan, now that we've seen 11 games of the Carlisle era Pacers and 4 out of 5 stars, we've seen everybody play except for him. Where do you feel like he'll help this team the most?
Well, first off, you can't not talk about TJ Warren like we touched on, a little bit with LeVert, his mid-range game and his ability to just make a shot out of nothing is just another facet the Pacers need. In 2019-20, when he played the full year, he was, 48% from 10 to 16 feet away. He was 44% from 16 feet to the three-point line. And that's something you don't see utilized by almost any other team anymore, these mid-range jumpers. And that just adds yet another thing opposing defenses have to cover. You did touch on it a little bit. When he comes back, I mean, it adds another great defender along the perimeter in size. The thing with Brogdon and LeVert is this, giant size on the backcourt that the backcourt that kind of helps them out against these smaller guards. So when you bring Warren back, you bring a 6'8", 220-pound small forward, if you want to call him a small forward. And then you have, another defender on the wing that can defend these players that the Pacers had problems with, like against Portland, against, Covington or Norman Powell. But Covington was 6'7" and draining threes. So when Warren's back, that's not going to happen if you have another, big wing like that.
Yeah, I've asked. Defense is where I always have come back to with him, even though his offense is like, oh my God, how did he do that so often? Like, I've been asking. I asked Nick Nurse about this. Carlisle, a bunch of Pacers players, Luke Walton, like these big wings that you just talked about, like they have been killing this Pacers team for like 2 years now, basically since his injury. And Torrey Craig's helping a little, but he doesn't play like all the time. And so you get guys like Covington going off and OG Anunoby destroying his season average and Harrison Barnes having an off night and still hitting 22 points. Like that kind of stuff, they just don't have answers for these guys a lot. So they just get a couple easy buckets, like laughably easy buckets every game. Mm-hmm. And I get that Torrey Craig is helping, but more answers to that are always helpful because that's kind of, this is what I asked Nick Nurse about specifically, is like, that's kind of how teams are trending, how they want to gain their advantages. It's like these wings who can handle the ball and play really good defense, like that's basically everything in the way the NBA is played these days. So that they're going to become more and more popular and more valuable. So having ways to counter that is extremely important. That's why I think his defense is something I'm going to be really interested in when he does return and how that impacts the team. And the offense is an added bonus to me, which is absolutely wild to think about. Like, dude who can hit from absolutely everywhere at any time. Like 44% from 3 to 16 feet isn't like awesome. That's his whole career statistics, including Phoenix. So maybe not the best way to evaluate him, but even just looking at his whole career from that range, like that's fine as an end of possession shot. Like 0.9 points per possession is like, it's not good, but if the shot clock's at less than 5, that's fine. You live with that. And that's really valuable. He can hit threes now. He's been burying them since that last season he had at Phoenix. And at the rim, he's been insane his whole career, 71% from 0 to 3 feet. So I don't even know what number option he'll be. People always talk about, is he the third option, fourth option, whatever. But just having another release valve, another guy who can hit shots, added on to the defensive value he will bring, it's like the perfect missing piece for what the Pacers have had struggles with for the last 2 years.
Exactly. And it's going to be one of those, finally, for the Pacers, a good problem to have, right? You can only play 5 people and you're going to have all these wings and all these guards that are more than capable. I mean, Chris Duarte has shown he's capable. But another thing Warren will bring is that sort of minutes distribution. I mean, you want to bring in, Duarte's been fantastic. There's no argument against that. But what he has been playing is minutes he's never seen in college. He's already played 45 minutes one time against the Wizards. He played 41 minutes a couple of games later. Early in the season, that's fine. But again, we have to realize that this is the first time they have 2 days off. When you play in college, they play 2 times a week versus,
Right.
3, 4, maybe even 5 games a week if the schedule lines up like that. But it just adds another piece to where later in the season, games 1 through 25 might be fine, but 30 through 50, you start getting a little tired. 50 through 82, you get even more tired. So adding Warren is going to have another wing to sub in to help people stay fresh, to get his minutes down. I mean, we've already seen Duarte's minutes go down when LeVert's back, but I think that's beneficial in a way, especially towards the end of the season. We won't get that minutes fatigue.
One more break, guys, so I can tell you about one more awesome group of people, and that's the great folks over at Rock Auto, because with the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, there's 2023s out on the market now. What the heck? It's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. You got to get in there, find the part in the store, which is a huge pain. It's always in the wrong section. Go through the questioning at the counter. Then they order it. You got to go back and get it. Save time and money. Use rockauto.com instead of going through that process. Why spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts for your car when you could get it at rockauto.com for cheaper and quicker? They're a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Their prices are always low for every customer, and they have everything you could ever need for your car or truck. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the easy solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now to see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How'd You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com. And even the guy who turns 33 on this team, Justin Holiday, sniffing 30 minutes because their wing rotation. Yeah, absolutely a huge factor there as well. So numerous benefits. Super excited to watch him. And the follow-up question that everybody wants to ask, including me, with Warren is, look, you brought up Duarte. Like it's the elephant in the room with Warren is, who starts now? Because I understand the merit of both ways. If I didn't, like, before the season, I'm kind of team rookies are bad, like always. And Duarte has not been bad. So, like, that changes my brain. But before the season, I was like, yeah, you start Warren, even if Duarte is kind of good, because you're trying to win this year. But Duarte is like a winning player now, and he's only 24. So you actually do have to consider how you want to handle this. So does Warren start? You could make a lot of arguments, right? Do you want to put a big with the second unit? I don't know how that would go, but you'd have, Brogdon, LeVert, Warren, Duarte, not in that order, but whatever, and a big. Or you could go with LeVert as your sixth man now, and then you have Duarte, Warren as your 2-3. You have a lot of options. You could just stick him in for Duarte. There are so many ways to do this, but the bigger question is, should he start at all? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
It has to be somewhat like the LeVert situation, where wherever Carlisle puts him in for just the first half for the first game, see how he does. Maybe he has one of these, I call him again a mini audition quarter, where if they're not doing well, Carlisle just says, "Hey, Warren, go shoot 12 times this period, see what happens." It has to be slowly introduced.
I agree.
Not to get into too much speculation, that's just my personal opinion, but it has to be slowly introduced, kind of like Warren, or kind of like LeVert, and it has to be in a way where the chemistry that Duarte has built with the people that are currently playing isn't necessarily messed up. And again, that's probably eventually a good problem to have when you try to add another really solid player to the lineup. But should he start right away? In my opinion, probably not. Maybe do the first half thing like Warren or like LeVert, like I said, or something like that. Something in that vein I would prefer to see first.
I think immediately I would probably bring him off the bench too, for a couple of reasons. One, like you said with the LeVert stuff, ease him back. He hasn't played in a year.
Mm.
Like we're almost at the point where he hasn't played in a year. And even last camp, he was recovering from plantar fasciitis from the bubble, right? So I don't even know if he was 100% then. So, I might be like 10, 15 minutes for like a couple games, right? Like you're going to need time with that. And that is valuable, not only in the easing him back in, but then you're feeling out how he fits with the system you've built. Does he fit with the starters at all? Like you can have him be your sixth man for that stretch, who comes in for whoever you think would be the guy who moves to the bench. And if that lineup's really clicking, great. Now that you can start him. And if not, I'm sure he'd be receptive after such a long time off to being the guy who has the ball out with the second unit too. That's, again, I guess I don't know what he's thinking, of course, but just he's watching this team every day from the sidelines, on the bench at games. He has to feel where he can fit in and help. So, as time goes on, I think we'll kind of get that feel more. So I think right away, especially because he hasn't played in so long, I would not start him. But with the goal of, like, I think ideally when he's fully reintegrated or whatever, I would think he would be one of the 5 best guys. And starting versus closing is a different discussion. So I think the idea would be I would try to grow him to the point where he would be a starter, but spending that whole time of growth feeling out what actually makes the most sense for the team.
Yeah, and I do not envy the athletic trainers that have to determine
No, me either.
Determine when a stress fracture is good to go. For people that don't know, a stress fracture is probably one of the hardest to judge from all the athletic trainers that I've grown up and been around in kind of the sports industry. Everyone says stress fractures are kind of just up in the air because it's repeated motion that makes these small chips in your bone in your feet, such as, well, jumping. Well, I guess that's a big part of basketball. So, I don't envy any athletic trainer that gives him the okay, only for 3 games later, we see him kind of playing no basketball again. So if it's a slow process, I think that's a good thing moving forward for the future. If it's, small minutes here, if it's finding out chemistry there, it's going to take some time.
He's going to play 12 minutes in his first game, and then an 11-year-old on the internet's going to tell me that he's soft, and I'm just going to throw my phone out the window. Twitter is the most insufferable place.
Twitter's fantastic, yes, for multiple reasons. Whether that fantastic is sarcastic or not, it's fantastic.
It is exactly what you make it to be. So, I don't think we'll get another Warren update for several weeks till his next scan. But it seems like everything's been trending well, basically ever since the announcement this summer that it would still be a little bit of time and that he's progressing. And Carlisle's a very positive guy with injuries, which is very funny because he never provides timelines. But he's like, "We got good news today," and that's all he says. So we'll see in a couple of weeks how that is. But Carlisle will be very fun and interesting every step of the way. So I have one more topic I want to get to, and it's not a good one, unlike the first couple of things we've talked about today. This is unique to the Pacers this season. Very unique to the Pacers this season. They're currently 24th in the league. 16.5 turnovers per game. Oof. You never want to be near the bottom in that category. And sometimes, I like to, especially with this team that's had the same roster but different coaches over the last couple seasons, where you can look back at very recent seasons and get kind of an idea of what this exact team ranked in these categories. Last year, they were 13th at 13.5 per game. That's 3 less. The last season under McMillan, they were 5th in the league, only 13.2 per game, right? So trending in a bad direction here, and it's been a problem for them. It has absolutely killed them. They had a ton against the Kings and were able to survive it. They had a ton of killer ones against Portland that they weren't able to survive. It's clearly, to me, been their biggest kryptonite this season. As even as they've gotten better, they've looked better than the other team in a lot of these games where turnovers are the reason they lose, to me. And Carlisle said as much in his post-game presser. Like he always comes up and he looks at the stat sheet and he does an opening statement. And he always, after a loss, says, "We turned it over too much," or "We didn't take care of the ball," or something to that effect. So what do you think with the same roster that was in the top half of the league and not turning it over in past seasons? What have you kind of felt like has pushed them towards the bottom of the league in this very important category?
It's really hard to key in on. You can say it's a different offense. It's the fact that they want to kind of pass more into the paint and then come back out. And that's risking, your big men who may not have sort of the best hands, fumbling it in the paint. There's multiple defenders in the paint, so there's more chances for turnovers. But I really think, honestly, it's the consecutive turnovers that are really hurting them. Against the Kings, they had 3 consecutive turnovers to start the fourth. Against the Heat, they had 3 straight in the third. And if you even go back a little farther against the Raptors, they had a late string of turnovers in the second quarter that just completely derails their momentum. And players have said it in press conferences. It's not necessarily the one turnover or the bad pass that everyone's going to make. Even Tom Brady throws incomplete passes. So like you don't expect 0 turnovers a game. You don't expect, 4 even. You expect a certain number, and they're way over that. And I think it's because they get this mentality in their head that, okay, one turnover. Oh, another one. Oh, another one. And now all of their momentum's blown. And it's kind of I think it's more of a mental game right now. The fact that these string of turnovers are happening, and that's where you see the inflated numbers, is because they're happening back to back to back.
I agree with the mental game aspect for a couple reasons. One is that, like, in general, like, aggressive is not the perfect word here, but they make some tough passes to try to do that inside out paint touch game. Sometimes where, like, there's a duck in from the big and they try to whip it in real quick, and that's a hard pass. Like, some guys are good at it on this team. Wanamaker, actually, that's one of his better passes, despite him having some issues with turnovers this season. He's gotten good at the whip it into the big pass. But a lot of that leads to a lot of them. But in the situations where they're, like, really looking for that, I think they get one, like you said, and they're like, we got to fix it. We just messed up. Let's get it right this time. And then they go for that hard thing again. Or, like, the other team that just stole it from a similar action's like, we know how to stop this. We just did it, right? So I agree with the snowball effect, and it's part of the reason they've had a lot of these runs where you're like, oh, wow, they were just up 15. Like, how are they only up 4 all of a sudden? That's a big part of it. And the other thing for me is going back to the aggression again. Maybe this time I think it is the right word. They throw some passes that are just crazy. Not even the ones that are, like, trying to do what they're trying to do. It's like the way Carlisle likes to play transition, and this was a big talk in camp, was like, throw it ahead. Anyone can do it. Anyone can handle it. Anyone can push it. And then they're trying some stuff that I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, that is not a pass you should be doing. Or, like, Wanamaker had one against the Kings where he went behind the back to a roll man who was ahead of him at the start of the fourth quarter. Like, it was like, I get why that would be good if it was perfect, but that, even if it's perfect, that's a hard, like, what do they just, I think they don't, I don't know if you've seen The Office, but KISS is Dwight's acronym. Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think they need to kiss with some of their passes where they need to get out of this aggressive, let's throw a pass to set someone up moment to just, like, what do we do really well? Let's settle into that and not fire it right at a defender.
Yeah, and I at this point, 11 games, the press conference are a little blending together, but I think it was
Yes.
Jeremy Lamb who said right in the press conference, sometimes we go for the home run ball instead of finding the short, easy pass. And I think that's what they're getting into, is this mentality where, oh no, we're down a certain number of points. We need a home run ball. We need this right now, instead of saying, hey, there's so many minutes left on the clock. Let's just find somebody open, and then maybe we'll find a good one the next time. And that's that thing that Carlisle is trying to teach them, that every possession matters. And it's the same when they're down. You can only score 2, 3, and maybe 4 points of possession. And you're not going to win a game on one possession, so all of them matter. And so going for the home run ball every time is starting to cause these, streaks and runs of turnovers.
This is something that only you and I will care about, but, like, Carlisle is so consistent with his messaging in a way that other coaches aren't, that I love it. Like in the Portland game, they just blew a 9.8 in under 5 minutes, and they lose by 4. And everyone on the internet, people who cover the team, even me, I'm like, oh, they just blew it. And Carlisle comes up to the stand, he's like, yeah, I don't care about the end. We lost the game in the first 5 minutes because our possessions are bad. Then I'm like, how are you feeling like that right now? Like, you guys had this in the bag. And he's like, yeah, we didn't start down 17-4, we would have won. And he's right. Like, if you just flip the timing of the game, it's the same thing would happen, and he would have said, oh, the ending was terrible. He's so consistent with that messaging of, like, valuing every possession and taking care of the ball. And at that point, when you're like, you guys just blew it, how can you say that? You're like, wow, he really feels out the game the same way every time. I like to open up the end of these podcasts to the floor to guests. So, Brendan, I put this on our itinerary. Yes. I wonder if you're coming with something. What do you want to talk about this year's Pacers?
Well, to quote a now infamous quarterback in the NFL,
oh boy,
relax is what I want people to say.
Yeah.
I want people to just relax. You're not gonna know what this Pacers team is going to be, what their official, moniker is going to be for at least 20-something games. I would even give a new coaching staff 30, 35 games to really see. And I at this point, I trust Carlisle. I mean, he's been around the league for years, won a championship with the Dallas Mavericks. he knows what he's doing. He knows that this was a feeling out process, these first games in the season. He knows the schedule was hard. And so these fans or anybody that are saying, oh, this Pacers team's ruined, this Pacers team, this and that, they still have, 70-something games left. And everyone is starting to hit the panic button when it's way too early to hit the panic button. And that's probably the main topic, is I just wish people would relax.
They basically have the same number of games they played last season left this year.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, and they played 73. Like, they still have that much left this year. I agree with that for two reasons. One, yes, I think for every team, even if you're the Sixers who are 8-2, even they're probably like, everybody come on. Okay, it's the first 10 games. They have an MVP candidate. They feel a little differently, but even they got to be like, okay, we've got to keep this going. We don't know if this is real, especially because they have a lot of other stuff going on. But still, just the point holds for the opposite level of teams too, where you got to get a while in before you really know what you are and what you need to do going forward. The other thing for me is, and look, this is my own predictions, right? I can't tell you what anyone else's expectations were, but I went through the schedule before the season and picked every single game, what I thought would happen. If they had a back-to-back, if they're on a road trip, if they struggle against specific ones, blah, blah, blah. I know this team pretty well. I only had them at 5 wins right now. They have 4. Like, it's not like they're even playing that bad. They have a really hard schedule. They've played the most games in the league. They've had the back-to-backs. Their upcoming back-to-back is impossible, by the way. The 2 altitude teams on back-to-back nights. Are you kidding? Right? So it's not even that. Like, I have them losing their next 4 with my preseason predictions. Maybe they win a couple of those, and then all of a sudden they've caught up to what I thought they would be at. So I think that for fans that are already panicking, first of all, why? It's only been 11 games. But second of all, I think a big reason for it is just because they've been close games. But these results aren't stunning. They've had many starters out. Their schedule has been really hard. They've played the most games. I agree with you 100% for several reasons. Just no one is good at chilling out when you're 4-7, but chill. Everybody chill.
Yeah, everyone needs to relax. Everyone knew that it would be, everyone knew that it would be, a new regime always has its ups and downs, and it just needs to play out. And you're right. I mean, these losses, except for one game in Toronto, where they always struggle in Toronto for whatever reason, even though it's not their farthest road trip by far, they always struggle up north. But all these other ones, I mean, they were the first team since 1950s, 1955, 56 to lose both opening games by 1 point exactly.
1 point. Yep.
I think the last team was the Fort Wayne Pistons before they even, moved.
It's this state, man. It's this state.
But yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's not, I don't see, other than the turnovers, I don't see bad basketball. I don't see anything that is cause for alarm. It's working out the kinks. Unfortunately, it's like any job. It's like, writing a movie or writing a play. You're going to have failures. You're going to have everything until something's perfect. There's multiple drafts in any writing that you and I do or anything. Like, it's going to happen. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think take it with a grain of salt, people out there. But if they do split these high altitude games, I think that's a good sign.
I agree.
For the 3rd or 8th of the season, however you want to split it up. If they split these, pick one, doesn't matter. If they get one of 2, I think that's a really good sign.
So they were tied with the Nets with 5:15 to go, and they were down 5 against the Bucks with under 6 minutes to go. And I pick out those 2 games specifically because that means outside of in Toronto, the game you mentioned, clearly their worst performance of the season, they've been within 5 in every loss they've had this season with 5 minutes to go. It's like they're so close to being so much better. And you're right, the turnovers are the key indicator. So yes, I 100% agree they are better than 4-7 suggests, and it's only 11 games. Relax, everybody. That's a great ending topic. I have trouble telling people how to feel, but sometimes I think people are being stupid. The early season now is one of those times. Do you have another topic, or is that what your one?
That was my big one. I don't have much, especially at 11. Game 11.
Game 11.
Not yet. Yeah.
Yeah, we will re-diagnose the Pacers at Thanksgiving time. I think will be that's about 20 games. I think that's exactly 20 games in actually is Thanksgiving time. So that's a good time to really reflect, because a lot of the times after 20 games, the standings are very similar to how they finished. Now, ironically, one team that really bucked that trend last year, Rick Carlisle's Dallas Mavericks. So we will, and the Pacers, ironically. So we'll see what happens this season. But looking forward to seeing how things shake out going forward. I agree that splitting this road trip would be awesome. Brendan, it's on the screen for our YouTube listeners, but for audio people, where do people follow you and all your stuff and your work with the Pacers?
Yes, you can follow me at B_Rourke Sports on Twitter. That's my main platform. I do warn people that it is my personal Twitter account, so you will see a lot of Pacer stuff, a lot of me yelling at the college football playoff, as that's my also my heart. You'll find me yelling a lot about UCF football as well. So I do warn people, if you want all Pacers news, follow the great and wonderful Tony East, anything like that. You can find all my work on Pacers.com. If you want to read any of game rewinds I do, it's you can go to the schedule and click more under the wins and losses, or you can, I think it's the news tab.
News and media tab.
There's a news and media tab. It'll say Game Rewind Archive. All of my stuff is there. And also shout out to Wheat Hotchkiss, senior manager of Pacers web and marketing. He does some of the games as well. So great writer as well. So you'll find all there, or my Twitter account.
Wheat's a machine, man. He runs the .com side beautifully while managing a young child. It's very impressive.
It is incredible. Yeah.
It is really incredible. I agree. Brendan, thanks so much for the time. You can follow me at TEastNBA and the show at Locked On Pacers tomorrow. I believe Ryan Blackburn will be coming on to preview Pacers Nuggets ahead of Wednesday, which should be super fun. Brendan, again, thank you for the time. And everybody, we will see you tomorrow.